America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Senator Tom Cotton is not only conference chair of the Republicans in the Senate, he's also the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And I believe that one or the other, certainly the former, are going to mark up an ICC, International Criminal Courts bill this week. Am I right about that, Senator?
Good afternoon, Hugh. It's good to be on with you. Not quite. We actually have a bill from the House of Representatives that passed overwhelmingly both last summer and earlier this month with more than 40 Democrats that would impose sanctions on every ICC official, prosecutor, judge, lawyer, investigator, researcher who in any way is engaged in illegitimate matters for the court. First and foremost, targeting American troops. They've done it before. They've continued to do it in the past. We've been very clear how serious we are. We sent Imran Khan, the prosecutor there, a letter saying if he proceeded against another non-party, Israel, that he would pay the price. That's the price they're about to pay. It is time for this illegitimate court to learn its lesson. If you investigate America or you investigate our friends who don't belong to the treaty establishing the court, we're going to lower the boom on you.
What kind of sanctions are there, Senator, that are being proposed?
It is the ordinary, routine, and customary sanctions that block property transactions on property that is present in the United States and that deny visas to the officials and to their immediate family members. The kinds of ordinary, routine, customary sanctions that Obama and Biden imposed on people almost 50 times during their tenures in office. And again, it doesn't target the entire court. I might have preferred to do that, but my friend Chip Roy in the House negotiated on a bipartisan basis last summer to target only those officials at the court that are responsible directly for suits or investigations against Americans or friends in other countries who are not a party to the court. So the Democrats really don't have any serious argument here to oppose it. That's why over 40 Democrats supported the bill earlier this month. And I hope my Democratic colleagues in the Senate will come along with me and stand up for our fellow citizens, and especially for American troops who have been targeted by this court in the past. And let's just be frank, if the court gets away with targeting Benjamin Netanyahu, I think it's a trial run for targeting Donald Trump now or in the future.
Now, which committee is the authorizing committee for this, Senator? Who gets the first whack at an ICC?
It would typically come out of the Foreign Relations Committee, Hugh. However, the Foreign Relations Committee last year, under Ben Cardin and ultimately under the direction of Chuck Schumer, refused to take action on this bill, even though it passed last summer from the House, again with more than 40 Democrats, because Chuck Schumer didn't want to put his senators in a hard spot to offend the anti-Semitic wing of their party, which is sadly large and growing. So he put this bill on ice. He never engaged in negotiations, certainly not in good faith negotiations. But now that we're in charge, we're calling up this important bill that is absolutely critical to protect our fellow citizens from this illegal, illegitimate kangaroo courts investigations.
Good for you. I hope that gets through in lickety-split fashion. Talk to me a little bit, if you can, Senator, about nominations. Secretary Hegseth was confirmed. We played part of your speech about prepared to work around the clock, and I think you are working around the clock. When do you see all the cabinet members being done?
Well, Hugh, the Democrats cried uncle Friday night after Pete's confirmation, which I was pleased to see, by the way. Without getting too far in the weeds, I would say that if we had actually worked around the clock under the Senate rules by tonight at about 6 o'clock, we would have had confirmed Pete Hegseth, Kristi Noem, and Scott Bessent, and that's all. Wow. Because we ground down the Democrats' will on Friday, we were able to allow our senators to go home for Sunday, see their families, and go to church back home. But also tonight we'll be voting not only to confirm Scott Bessent to be Secretary of Treasury, to begin Sean Duffy's debate on the floor, which I expect will conclude tomorrow before lunch. So it is working. The Democrats are learning a little bit that we're prepared to do it the hard way, and they've wanted to do it not quite the easy way, but at least the less hard way.
The most important one after defense and the CIA, in my view, is Attorney General Bondi, or Attorney General Designate Bondi, and her deputy, Todd Blanche. Where are those?
So, Hugh, I'm not on the Judiciary Committee anymore, but I do believe that I saw in my morning briefing papers that Judiciary will vote on Pam Bondi's nomination on Wednesday. So that would typically, again, under ordinary practices, set up a vote to confirm Pam Bondi. If not over the weekend, then early next week. I'm not sure about where Todd Blanche's nomination is. I do know that the Judiciary Committee is moving after the Wednesday vote to have its hearing on Thursday for Kash Patel to be the director of the FBI. I suspect that's a higher priority right now for the White House than Todd Blanche is, even though we really need to get Todd Blanche in. But I would expect that after they're done with the Kash Patel confirmation hearing, they'll be moving promptly to the Todd Blanche nomination.
Let's switch over to the DOD since you're on Armed Services. How about SecNav Phelan? I do believe it's urgent that we get a plan and we implement it, and you can't do that until you have a SecNav and some staff around him. What do you think?
I think the Armed Services Committee will move to Mr. Phelan's nomination as soon as the paperwork is in. We have a hearing later this week for Dan Driscoll to be the Secretary of the Army. That hearing had been originally scheduled last week. I think it had to be postponed because of the paperwork delay. I suspect that we're able to move a little bit quicker on Dan Driscoll's nomination than on John Phelan's, just to be frank, because Dan Driscoll is much younger and John Phelan is much richer.
Yep.
Sometimes it takes it takes a little bit of time to do the thorough background inspection, but for some of these older men who have been lavishly successful in business, to make sure their paperwork is in order and they've divested from any stocks or other assets that might be within the scope of their responsibility.
Long ago and far away, Senator, when you were in swaddling clothes or short pants, I used to do some of those divestment stuff, and it always hit people in the head when they found out that they had to divest in order to serve. Are those rules still as stringent as they used to be?
They're pretty strict, Hugh. I mean, obviously in the executive branch, you can't have an interest in anything that you would oversee or for which you'd be materially responsible, or if you do, you might have to recuse. Those recusals are common. They're not helpful in many cases. It's not good, for instance, to have a Secretary of Defense that has to recuse from major decisions because they used to work at one of these defense contractors. I think that's another thing that commended Pete Hegseth to President Trump, is he's an outsider and a disruptor, and he's going to be in charge of everything. It's been a common practice in recent years that we've had secretaries that have had to recuse from pretty significant decisions about major weapon programs, fighters, bombers, ships, submarines, what have you. But it is still pretty stringent that we don't want people engaged in decision-making in any place where they might have a financial or personal interest.
Last quick question. The Deputy Secretary of Defense is the inside person, the one who runs the big Pentagon while Pete Hegseth is out being a recruiting poster and making policy with the president. When does that nominee come before your committee?
Again, Hugh, I think as promptly as possible once we have the paperwork in. Mr. Feinberg, like Mr. Phelan, has had a long and very successful career in business, so I'm sure it takes some time to liquidate some of his investments, probably that are illiquid, that are not in publicly traded securities, but I think he'll move promptly. I will say, Hugh, one thing about the way you frame the question, and this is something I've told Pete Hegseth repeatedly, is the Secretary, although he is the public face of the department, he spends a lot of time with the President, he has to be out meeting the troops, is the only person with the authority and prestige to drive reform inside the building. And I think Pete knows that, and I expect him to be very hardworking inside the department to get the reform we need.
Senator Tom Cotton, thank you for your time from the